Hello everybody, this is Carm Killed the Cat, and welcome to your 11th C++ tutorial. In this tutorial, we will be getting into object-oriented programming. We'll be starting with structures. So let's get started. So before we get into using structs, let's get into what object-oriented programming is. So what it is it's when you create a prototype of an object, and that prototype can have functions, variables, and other objects. And then you use that prototype in your program to create multiple instances of the object that exist completely separately from each other. They have the same variables and the same functions, but those variables can have different values, the functions can be called at different times, and they exist completely separately from each other. They don't even know that the other one exists. So now that we know that, let's get into declaring a struct. So we do struct, and then we'll name it. We'll call it player. For your variables, you want to name an object. You want it to start with a capital letter. So Visual Studio does this for us, but all the data in the structure prototype is in the curly brackets, and then you have a semicolon at the end. So what a structure is it's an object that can hold any amount of variables. So it can't hold functions. That's a class. We'll get into that in the next tutorial. But it can hold variables. So let's include string. So include string. So let's give it a string name. You want the variables that exist in an object, or the member variables in an object, to have the capital letters too. So standard string name. Notice that we don't declare it or define its value. We'll give it an int for health. Give it speed. And that should be enough for a basic example. So now let's create some separate instances of this object. So we'll do player, actually, just do a shortcut, P1. You want instances of an object to start with a capital letter too. It's just variable naming standards. It won't create an error if you don't, but it's what most people do. It just makes your code more clear. So player P2, and now to access the variables within the player, we do P1.name equals, sorry about the corny names, Bob, and P2.name equals Steve. So let's output these. So standard count, P1.name, and standard end line, and then we'll just copy and paste this, save some time, and change this to P2. Let's build this. So Bob and Steve. So you can see that these are both players, but the variable name, the member variable name in each of them is different. So these are completely separate instances of the player object. So these objects act just like a normal variable. So let's create a function. Print player name. So this just shows that we can pass structures in as variables. So player P, and we go down here to define it. We need a return type. I was just programming in Lua, so I always forget that. So void print, what's wrong with this now? Nothing. Print player name, player P. So we'll say standard count, P.name, and standard endline. So now let's just replace this with print player name. Oh man. Print, I can't type today. Print player name, P1, print player name, P2. So this will yield the same results. I accidentally ran it in debug mode. Oops. Oh wow, I did something bad. There we go. Bob, Steve. So let's create another function. Void change player name and const player and p. Remember the constant. Actually, we don't really need the constant. Oh no, we can't have the constant. Sorry about that. So void change. What's it called? Change player name. Player name. Player and p. And so we'll just do p dot name equals let's say John. And then let's copy and paste this. You'll see what I'm doing in a second. Paste that. And what's wrong? What? That should go away in a second. Let's do change player name. It's not going away. Oh, I need a semicolon. Change player name p1. Change player name. I could have given these functions shorter names. p2. Let's build this. So we get Bob, Steve, and John. So these act just like variables. We can pass them in by copy. Actually, we should be doing this constant player and p. Just because a struct can get big, so you should. This doesn't match anymore. Const player and p. So yeah, it's a small struct. You really don't need to do this, but for a larger object, remember you should do this. You learn this in the references tutorial. But yeah, we can pass it in by copy. This isn't really by copy, and we can pass it in by reference. So they act just like variables. So you can't really do much with structs on their own. They are useful, but on their own they're not. But try to play around, create some different structs, give them different member variables, create some more functions that do different things with them. Just play around with it. So in the next tutorial we'll be going over classes, which are a much more useful object type. So look forward to that, and see you in the next tutorial.